welcome back. We have another edit with me, and today on the docket is Sungjae Im hitting a fantastic approach shot at the BMW Championship 17th hole. And as we take a look on our screen, we first have to take a look at what we're dealing with. We have a lot of green in this image, so we're gonna have to be careful with that color. But then more importantly, we have just this great detail of the grass flying up along with the ball, so we want to make sure we highlight that in our edit. So the first thing we're going to do is just correct this white balance a little bit, and we can again try to do the tool pickle, and most of the times it doesn't work, but this time it did a pretty good job just introducing a little bit more pinks into this very green image, and then of course a little bit more warmth as this was taken during this past summer. And then the next thing that I always do is transform it, straighten up my horizon line, and then crop it into my preferred look. And this I think actually fits the 4:5 aspect ratio that Instagram loves, and we should utilize every time on Instagram as it fulfills the space. But in this case, it works perfectly. We cut out all the unnecessary detail we have on the left, and then we punch into him just a little bit more. As you can see, looking up at histogram, we have a lot of detail in the shadows. But the best part is Sungjae Im is already in the highlights, so when we try to draw him out and make him pop and make our subject pop in every photo that we edit, we already have advantage here because most of the image is already in the shadows except for him. So we're just going to do some general adjustments here on the right side before we get to the mask, which is the biggest part of this image. Normally I would go through my presets and I would go through and see which ones look the best, maybe the crush door for this one or the BG contrast, if I really wanted to be fancy, or just the everyday sharp, and then that would work from there. But for the sake of this edit with me, we're going to go step by step through every part of the process, not including the Lightroom preset, so you can do this on your own and get some insights from what I do. So the first step we're going to do is just increase this contrast just ever so slightly so we get some more richer colors. And then we're going to lower these highlights because I think they're just a little bit high, and then raise the shadows ever so slightly because we saw in the histogram we have a lot of details in those shadows we don't want to lose. And then like I do in most every photo, we're going to raise our shadows and lower our highlights a little bit so we don't get those true whites and true darks in our images. But then to reintroduce that contrast we lost, just going to lower our darkest shadows and raise our brightest highlights. And you can already see we drew in more of that contrasty look with those correct colors. And now we can actually go in and fine tune. Look at this image now, we see that there's a lot of vibrant greens, which kind of takes away from Sungjae Im. Then we also have a little bit of orange in his skin tone, so we're just going to try to fix that up slightly. Starting off with these greens, I do love where the saturation levels is, but I don't love how bright they are. So as you can see that I want to darken it only darkened this area, not the tree. And to combat that, we're just going to use the point color tool up here to get the exact colors we want. We're just going to bring down that luminance and saturation just ever so slightly, and then we're going to go back to the mixer. And while the screen doesn't do a whole lot, the yellow, as you can see, is what's going to change this. And I actually like the yellow luminance because you can see up here we got the highlights in this tree that get affected the most by it. So we're just going to bring up the yellow luminance and then counteract that with a little bit of deluminance in the green shadows. And you can see that we're already making slight improvement. In the skin we have a little too much orange, so just desaturate that a little bit and then add some more glow back to the skin with this red. And now we're finally ready to tackle our mask. So the first step is capturing our subject. This subject mask does a pretty good job because, again, it's solely focused on him, and we don't have a lot of distracting things in the background. That is, we were able to get that in a low depth of field for this image, so we can just raise his shadows a little bit. Again, we don't want his highlights blown out, but just raise his shadows and exposure ever so slightly, drawing some interest and perspective onto him. And then we do almost the exact opposite with the background, just lowering this exposure ever so slightly so he's the center of attention. Now the next step is to get detail in this divot path and this ball. That's one of the best parts of this image. That's kind of what makes this image so great, is we were able to capture that in the exact moment in time. And if we were a second too late, the ball would be thrown out and we might not have had all this divot and dirt and grass flying up in the air. So we have to really highlight that and make sure we do a good job with our mask. So we're just going to go by and start brushing in a little bit of this detail, and be careful that we don't want to get too much of the background when we're highlighting this detail, just making sure we're getting the biggest chunks of a detail. And then of course don't forget this golf ball up top. What we're going to do to really bring this out is up this contrast, but as you can see, that brings a lot of shadows into it. So then just up the exposure ever so slightly to bring back that correct level of lightness, and then come down here and just bring some clarity and texture back into this. Alright, now that we've taken into account the grass and the ball, we're just going to fine tune this lighting a little bit. As you can see here on the left hand side, we have just one person standing out who's just a little bit too bright, so we'll bring down his highlights and exposure just a little bit so he doesn't stand out from the rest of this crowd. But I do love how we have a sea of fans and the brightly colored shirts here, so we're just going to bring out those vibrant colors to add more interest into this image. And then our final thing is just to make sure we redirect this light to make sure we illuminate the what we've seen so far in this image. And you can see we have a lot of nice highlights on the top of this tree, so just going to emphasize that with a nice radial gradient coming out of this top right corner by just upping that exposure and highlights just a little bit, along with the warmth. You can see if I turn this on and off, it's just a little bit, but it does add just slightly in to this image. And we can even bring it down here so it's getting onto Sungjae Im, and you can see it just adds a slight detail to the image. And it's those small details that differentiate a good image from a great image, and the ones that keep us from continuing scrolling on Instagram or any other social media platform you may use. And then finally, just adding a little bit more shadows in to the bottom of the image so it really draws the viewer's attention in towards the middle. So we started from this overexposed Sungjae Im and a lot of highlights with not a lot of focus on him, towards a final image where we really use that lighting to bring it out to him and paying attention to the greens and what greens help or hurt in our image. So that's the final edit. Be sure to stay tuned for the following videos and more edit with me's to come.